today we thought that it would be good to really have Oskar sort of take us through the process of what it is to, from the very inception of the show, all the way to getting the show on, mounting the show, and then, I don't know, talk about that a little more. So I'm Oskar. I think if you could, just kind of tell us the nuts and bolts of point A to point C.
The great advantage that I have, having spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector, is that I actually am nonprofit. I don't have to think about making a profit with the work that we're developing. We have, of course, occasionally slipped over into the commercial sector, and we've had some very delightful experiences, a couple of not so delightful experiences doing that. But the huge advantage I think we have is that when we are working on a play, when we're working on a musical, when we're working on the embodiment of an artist's vision, by law, our job is not to turn it into something that's going to make money. Our job is to turn it into something that is going to be a contribution to the community as a whole. We select those the same way anybody else does, which is we pick writers and projects that I am passionate about, that I believe in. And look, that's not different from what you guys do, right? It's you look for a writer's voice. That means you try, that thing is indefinable, and we all know it when we hear it. Some writer who doesn't sound like anybody else, who has something distinctive in the way they approach the work that feels like that's, if I help support that, if I nurture that, it'll turn into something unique. Because we're the public theater, it also means that we have a certain predilection for what we call public work with a small p. In other words, most of the work we do is work that doesn't focus on the experience of an individual or even of an individual family, but tries to understand individual relationships or even familial relationships in the context of a broader social view. Our model for this is Shakespeare, because we are, after all, the New York Shakespeare Festival. That's what we started with. That's all we produced for the first 13 years of our existence. And in Shakespeare, if you look at the plays, there's no such thing as a private relationship. Two people falling in love with each other is never just their own business. It involves their parents, it involves their families, it involves their prince, it involves their state. And in every one of Shakespeare's plays, that's true. It's one of the things that makes him the greatest playwright we've ever had, is he's constantly locating personal experience within a larger social context. So that's the lens that we bring to new work, and which means that sometimes there's really exciting, interesting playwrights who I don't think are public theater playwrights, because they're not interested in that, and we kind of are. But the last thing for me to say about A, because, and again, this is specific to the public, it is our charge to try to make the stage and the theater as representative as possible of New York City, of America, and even to some extent of the world. So we are constantly actively looking for stories that aren't getting told in the media otherwise, for voices from communities who are not represented. Because we, in the mainstream culture, one of the things the stage has always been fantastic at is giving people the opportunity to announce that they belong at the center of the culture. That's actually what O'Neill was doing with the Irish, announcing that the Irish belonged at the center of Anglo-American culture. It's what Odets was doing with the Jewish community, announcing that the experience of Jews growing up in tenements in the Bronx could stand in for all of America. It's what Miller was doing, though he didn't always say so, but attention must be paid is not Anglo-Saxon dialect. The Lomans were Jewish, and he was putting that experience at the. It's what Wilson did with his great cycle. In other words, over and over you see that one of the great functions of the theater is broadening who gets to speak for America, who gets to, if you look at even the colloquial phrases we use, put the spotlight on, stand center stage. That's what we say metaphorically about people, but in the theater, that's what we literally do. We literally put people center stage. We literally put the spotlight on them. And hopefully by doing so, ennoble, empower, and give them the chance to speak.